got a couple of things I'm working on. I had my audio turned off this morning. One of them is this is a illustration. I drew this in 1994. This is Prime from the Ultraverse, Malibu Comics Ultraverse. I don't know if this was ever used. I was doing a lot of kind of side projects that I was working on. I worked as an inker at Malibu, but I was trying to learn how to draw, and I was doing a lot of that sort of covertly. I wasn't really showing that work to my editors there. I was still just trying to figure it out, and so I have a few pieces from that time. This is one of them that I penciled and inked, and somebody colored it, and there's a signature here, and I don't know who that was, but it was one of the colorists in the offices at Malibu. So I wish I knew who that was, but I know that Moose Bauman colored a lot of this kind of stuff for me, but this doesn't look like his signature. So I kind of don't think it's him. I think it's somebody else. Totally escapes me who that might be. But anyway, I just sold this on eBay, and it's been listed on my shop for a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a high-res scan so I can preserve the image in my files, and I'll probably try to maybe sell an art print of this as well. Yeah, it was colored with markers, so that was the standard way of coloring. A lot of the colorists at Malibu colored them by hand, and then they would give those sheets to the digital colorist. So there were basically it was segmented into two departments. Now, of course, colorists, they just color directly on screen. They don't have they don't have another person that does the coloring by hand. It's just all done digitally. But back in the early days of digital coloring, the colorists weren't really computer savvy. They were more of the traditional, using the markers to define the color palette and just coloring it on paper. And then they would hand it to the computer designers, and they were more, I think, they were more, they were artists too, but they had more computer experience. And of course, Photoshop was very new. It was like a new thing. And so there were a lot of artists did not know how to use Photoshop. I didn't know how to use Photoshop when it first came out. So they had a department of colorists who would take the hand colored art, and they would basically match that on screen. And the traditional colorists would point out the color, like the number, or the type of color, and they would look that up and they would match it on screen. And that's how it was done. That's how Image was coloring, and of course Malibu was Image's coloring department at the start. So I got to see all that, and I remember watching the digital colorists work and being really baffled and intrigued, but intimidated also, because it just didn't seem like it just seemed very complicated to do that. Of course, since then I have learned to color digitally, and actually Moose Bauman, who is probably one of the best colorists in the industry, he taught me how to color. He taught me the basics of how to digitally color comics, and I still kind of rely on those foundations today. So Moose, wherever you're at, thank you. So I'm going to scan this in. Hey Matt, can you hear me okay now? Prime drawing 1994. Alright, so I want to take this into Photoshop and let's see if we can clean this up a little bit. Try and get rid of those slightly yellowed with age. Just going to increase the contrast a little bit. Get rid of the white or the yellow. There's some little color ink splotches. Those were probably, like I said, colored with marker. It's possible they were colored with dyes. Dr. Martin dyes. That was the other kind of ink that was used for coloring comics. I don't think that's used anymore. I don't think I want to fix any of the little things where it's bled through. I think I'm just going to leave that as a kind of an artifact of that coloring process. I'm going to get rid of that little, kind of bugs me there. All right. We'll save that. So this is going to be posted over on my Patreon page. Yesterday's post was free to the public. It's a pretty big post too. I've got to create today's post. I'm just gonna do that real quick. I have a Malibu Comics category where I just sort of dump a lot of my Malibu art that sells. That when it sells, I'll scan it and post it. I'm not going to write the entire post. I'm just going to get a draft ready to put in. So if you're watching this live stream live, or if you watch the recording later on YouTube, I do the live streams generally Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So I hope you'll consider subscribing either over on Twitch or YouTube or Instagram. That's where the live streams are happening. I'm just going to set a publish date for that for today. And my Patreon posts are Thursdays and Fridays, usually around 6 p.m. And they really just contain whatever projects I happen to be working on that week. A lot of process shots, works in progress. I do also post Patreon exclusive rewards like high-res art, and if you're I think it's tier 3 or tier 4, you will get a print poster and access to a sneak peek preview of my upcoming comic book miniseries called Secret Powers. Alright, I'm going to schedule that. And I have links there on the bottom left you can click on that go to the various channels that I maintain. Alright, so we got Prime ready in the queue. I think the other thing I'm going to focus on here a little bit is High Strangeness, which is this was my first graphic novel from the late 1990s, which was a million years ago, it seems. And I am revisiting it and basically republishing it as a, I guess, special edition, you would call it, just because, and I've told the story before, but I no longer own the original pages from that book. I sold them many, many years ago. And unfortunately, I did not really have decent high-res scans. So although I was able to publish the book, I did do a limited print run. I published it as a webcomic as well, and it was okay for the time as a webcomic, but it's been dead in the water for a long time because I never had high enough resolution images to do a good quality print. I think that's the one I want. So when I bought my iPad Pro a couple of years ago, I realized that I can re-ink this book. I could actually re-ink it digitally, high res. I could put the kind of detail and that I wanted to have in the book. And so that's what I've been doing for the last year or so, is just slowly working on that project here and there. I have the first 60 pages re-inked, and I'm working on the lettering. So that's what I'm going to pick up and do a little bit here this morning. Takes a minute for this to open. Come on, InDesign. Guess while we're waiting on that, I can show you. Let's take a look at the latest. Oh, here we go. Alright, so... my InDesign's really struggling right now, apparently. There we go. So this is a page that I have to re-ink. I thought I had them all inked and I missed a page, so that's why this one just shows the old original inks. And then this one I have an overlay of the original page so I can match the lettering. And that's really where I left off when I was working on this, I don't know, a week or so ago. Sure why that's there. So a lot of letterers, they letter with Adobe Illustrator, and I used to do that also, but I've developed a somewhat unique process where I'm inking directly in Adobe InDesign. Just seems to be a more efficient way to work. No, it's a little difficult to see, but I'm re-lettering this section down here. The font I'm using is, I believe it's Comic Craft's first digital font, which I used for High Strangeness. And it's been kind of interesting to revisit that font because, of course, there are hundreds of comic lettering fonts available now. Comic Craft, of course, has produced a lot. Blambot is probably the other most prominent comic lettering foundry, I guess you would call it. But as I've begun using this original font, I realized that this is a really great font. You know, I know it was probably overused in the 90s just because there just were not very many available. And it may date this project a bit. I considered replacing it with a more modern comic font, but ultimately I decided to just stick with what I have here and retain the integrity of this book and what I intended at the time, and not to really go too far off script, so to speak, with this special edition. think the only significant change I'm making with the lettering is I'm redoing the balloons, because my balloons were very, I don't know, they just look very mechanical and boilerplate. So I'm using more organic looking balloons that look more hand drawn. So just like the art, I'm making a few little improvements where I feel it's necessary. So this book is about the UFO phenomenon. And it's split into two sections. One is a illustrated history of UFOs. And the other is a fictional scenario where a UFO crashes in this small Ohio town, and the truth, quote unquote, is finally revealed, and it sort of explores how that affects our society. Subject I've been interested in many years. I have never seen a UFO that I would say is absolutely unexplainable. UFOs are technically just literally unidentified flying objects, and I've seen some stuff, but it's never been so bizarre that I was like, oh, this has to be aliens. It's just, I couldn't identify what the light was or whatever. But I know there are people who have claimed to have seen some pretty extraordinary things. And that fascinates me, that what is going on. So this story, this graphic novel, really deals with various facets of this phenomenon, and I drew it in a way so it really looks, I don't try to make it sexy. I really just like the aliens. Some of these UFO stories are ridiculous. I mean, they are really preposterous, and I really tried to convey some of that visually, which is why I feel like this book is pretty unique. Hey, Nick, thanks for joining. Happy Friday. Font size on this too. I actually like lettering. Lettering is, as a writer, it's literally my last opportunity to make some changes, and I usually do that. Try to use that to reassess the narrative, see if something can be adjusted a little bit. did learn how to hand letter back when I was starting out. I wasn't very proficient at it, but I could technically letter by hand. Letterers used to use the what's called an Ames lettering guide to help rule, basically define the rows of the letters and the size and position. And it really is a lost art form. And I wish that I wish there was still a place for that in comics, but it's just one of those things that technology has replaced, and in many ways for the better, but I do think we lost something important from hand lettering. I try to make mine as organic as I can. So let's see, my lettering balloons are not perfect. I've intentionally kind of made them a little misshapen to give it that old school feel. Generally have one main balloon, and I manipulate each one of them a little bit so they all have a unique shape. Funny to look at some of this stuff because I didn't really have a great handle on the lettering at the time. This was my first solo comic on my own without any other collaborators. So in addition to the live streams, I do a Whatnot show every Monday at 7 p.m. I just started using Whatnot, doing these shows. Basically, they're live auctions while I'm drawing, and I'm still figuring it out. Still working on my whatever methods that I'm using for that show. The whole setup is very much a work in progress. But it is an opportunity if you're interested in owning some original art by me. You can get in early on the bids and come out with a really good deal on commissions. I'm offering commission sketches, and I also have some original art and art prints for sale there. So I hope to see you there. And you can look me up. My shop is Beyond Forward Art, which also happens to be the name of my eBay store. You can find original art from my time at Marvel and Image, Dark Horse, other publishers. Trying to get a nice, even arrangement of this. Sometimes it's a little tricky. There we go. I don't typically like to have these kind of dangling words after an apostrophe, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So how I do this, I'll zoom in so you can see I have basically two layers. I've got the balloon layer that has the outline, and then above it I've got one without an outline, and then above that I have the actual lettering. And I can just modify it a little bit. So now it's joined nicely. So far I haven't really made any significant rewrites on this, but I am keeping an eye out for things that I have an opportunity to refine a little bit. I am going to do that. the other thing about the transition from traditional lettering to digital is, I remember as a writer just feeling really empowered